Sorry about that. Yeah, there I am in the corner. So thank you everyone for joining. And thank you everyone for being here. I think this is a really great opportunity. So without further ado, I'll let Roz, the Managing Director of the Observatory, welcome you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll keep this brief, but I just want to say good morning to you all. It's lovely to see a whole lot of people from SARAO and from SAO and various other institutes around the Cape and even further afield in the country, as well as some special guests who Kevin will introduce as we go along. But welcome to SAO and happy Heritage Day for the other day. I see we also have some beautiful outfits. So lovely to see you all here, and I hope you'll have a good morning. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks very much, Roz. So we're here today for many reasons. We're trying to pack it all in, and that's because we have so many special guests here. We were saying earlier, it's such a nice gathering of all the astronomy players. We need to do this more often. Just to acknowledge very quickly, maybe you can just raise your hands. We've got the IAU President, Willie Benz, in the room. We've got the incoming Director General of SARAO, who you all know, currently Director of ASTRON. That's our speaker for later, Jessica Dempsey. We've got Lindsay Magnus, who's the Director of SARAO Mid here in South Africa. We've got Poncho Marapeng, the Managing Director of SARAO, who all of you will know. Of course, Roz, our Managing Director. Nkani, Director of SALT and Deputy Director. Nkani is there. We've got Patrick Vogt from IDEA, the Institute for Data Intensive Astronomy. We've got Michelle from University of the Western Cape. We've got DJ from the University of Cape Town, and we've got Amare, who's the president of the African Astronomical Society here. So let's give all of these special guests a hand. And I want to hand over to the IAU president, Professor Willie Benz, to just say a few words on behalf of the IAU. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. I have my little notes here. Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be back here in South Africa, a year after a memorable General Assembly, and to bring the greetings of the IAU to this new special occasion that is taking place here today. Now, as you know, the IAU is a worldwide organization of professional astronomers. We have about 12,500 individual members and 85 national members. And we are organized in a number of divisions, commissions, working groups, and 4 offices and 1 center. And our mission is to promote and safeguard the science of astronomy in all its aspects, from research to communication, to education, to outreach, to development, through international cooperation. Now, the IAU was founded in 1919, so it is over 100 years. Its headquarters is in Paris. And in this over 100 years, the world has changed significantly. Not just astronomy, but science in general has changed a lot. And recently, with these changes, have come new expectations from funders, from governments, from society, that science, especially the large research infrastructure that use a lot of taxpayers' money, there are expectations for societal return from these undertakings. And this is really a major change. And this expectation is something that is new. Now, publishing, just super science papers and super research results is still a requirement, but they're no longer sufficient. Now people expect more. And the IAU has realized that relatively early, because astronomy is a special science. Astronomy is something that inspires people of all cultures, of all walks of life, in a way probably no other science does. I don't know any other science that has so many amateurs, for example, and so many people looking at the sky and wondering, what's there, how far it goes, if we are alone on Earth. So to answer these expectations, the IAU created these offices. And one office is the Office of Astronomy for Development, the OAD, which is here in Cape Town and is hosting us and together with the observatory here today. So OAD is a partner collaboration with NRF, and with the support of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. So we are very happy to be able to partner with this institution and to be hosted by the observatory here in Cape Town. Now, the other office, I won't say much about them, is the Office for, by the way, the OAD was founded in 2011. The next one, the Office for Outreach, is located in Tokyo and has been founded in 2019. And the Office for Education is in Heidelberg, Germany, and was established in 2019. No, 21.
Yeah, OAO was 2012 and OAE 2019.
Yeah, that's right. I missed the date. I messed up the dates. That's right. And the last addition to the family is the CPS. It's a Center for the Protection of the Quiet and Dark Sky. And you all know how important that is. So, the commitment of the IAU for these societal benefits, you can read it in the strategic plan for 2020-2030 we have issued a while ago. And of the 5 main goals in that strategic plan, 2 are related to science and research, the original role of the IAU to federate and to bring communication between the astronomers worldwide. But 3 are directly related to societal benefits of astronomy. So the majority of our goal relate, and they are not surprisingly related to the offices we have, education, outreach, and development. So now, which means also that we're really taking this role seriously. And the OAD has been incredibly successful in bringing astronomy to people and the benefits of astronomy to people. They have their project programs, and they have been able to fund to 1.4 million euros, more than 200 projects in over 100 countries, reaching about 2 million people. Speaking of impact, it is not sufficient, of course. You would like to do much more. And today there will be the launch of a new initiative. And I'm not going to talk about it. I will let those directly involved in this initiative to talk about it. But this is another step into trying to bring to people a better life, thanks to and using astronomy to that goal. Now, I would like to conclude, warmly thank all those involved in these initiatives, starting with NRF, the STI, the South African Astronomical Observatory, and all the members of OAD, all the staff of OAD, and also all the many people that work around the world as volunteers in all these projects, and to make a difference in the life of people around the globe. So the IAU is very proud to the work of all these people. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and wish you a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Willie Benz, President of the IAU. So I just want to emphasize something that Willie said. You know, we say that the OED is about using astronomy to make the world a better place. Just to highlight, this is a core activity of the International Astronomical Union. It's a core activity of the professional astronomy community. It's not sort of a side hustle or a side activity. This is I'm saying this importantly because for the IAU as the global voice of astronomy to recognize the importance of development, the importance of communication, of outreach, education, it means that this is core to the quest for discovering the universe. It's important to realize that when we explore the universe, we bring all of humanity on board. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Joyful Mdluli. She's our flagship coordinator at the OED. And I think her title is now, we're saying she's captain of the ecosystem that we're launching today.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, no, I'm the captain now. Let me I have a few slides, but because we're running late, I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. Good morning, everyone. So lovely to see the auditorium so full today, and it's not an open night. So this is very exciting. So I'll be talking a bit about our OAD flagship ecosystem. So it's not a new initiative. It's something that has been in the works for a couple of years, but then one day we took a step back and reflected on the work that we've been doing. And it resulted in this ecosystem that basically will be a framework that we use with the new flagship projects that will be coming along at the OED. So for those who are not familiar with our flagship projects, we have 3 of them at the OED, and these are basically a result of projects that we had funded over the years. And we, in 2019, we did an analysis of the projects that were funded and the proposal we had received. And from that, we came up with themes that are basically identified as things that would be able to scale further as well as make maximum impact. And from these themes, we have 3 flagship projects. So the first one looks at astrotourism, where we can use it to stimulate local economies through astronomy. And then there's an astronomy for mental health project that is led by our awesome person, Dominic, is somewhere in this room. So if you're interested in astronomy for mental health, you can have a chat with Dominic. He'll tell you a lot more about that. And that just focuses on using astronomy for mental well-being. And then the third one is the one that's mostly linked to astronomers, where we use astronomy skills for development. And this is either through skills development or capacity building, but also leveraging astronomy-related expertise to address global developmental challenges. So moving on to the actual flagship ecosystem. I'm sure you've already seen this online. We tried to just get it out there before today, but basically the work that we're doing can be summarized into 4 key areas. The first one, looking at resources. So we've got guidelines, we've got case study from the projects we funded, but also like there's work being done towards research as well. And the second one looks at training. So we're launching our free online training courses for our flagship projects that I will give you a bit more detail on that. And then the implementation has been primarily through our annual call for proposals. And then also community. I mean, we already have a community of astronomy for development people, but then now we want to expand this community instead of just the OED communicating with the community, but have the community itself interact amongst each other without having for us to facilitate this discussions. So the first one is the resources. So our resources are all open access. Are available to anyone. And basically what we plan to do with what we plan, the plan was with the resources was to basically get people to have a rough idea of how to implement the projects that we have in the office as well. And these resources are available for astrotourism, for mental health, as well as for skills development. And it's just basically the guidelines that we have for people to also adapt the work that people are doing in different parts of the world as well. And in the community, so I guess this is one of the things that we're launching today, in addition to our ecosystem, is that we have expanded our community from mailing lists and social media to a Discord platform where people can engage properly. So the platform basically aims to be a knowledge sharing system, open for collaboration, professional growth, and community building. So as you can see here, basically this is people who can be part of the OED community, a lot of our IAU network with our sister offices, as well as observatories, researchers, but because we also have astrotourism and mental health, we also want tourism people as well as mental health practitioners to be part of this community so they can exchange ideas and information as well. So if you want to join this community, it's open to everyone. You can join us in Discord. You can scan the QR code, but then because I'm rushing through it, you might just come to me later and find it, but it's also available on our websites as well. So like I said, with the implementation, the key thing has always been through our annual call for proposals, but because we have limited funding, we've only been able to fund a certain number of projects. So this is the second thing that we're also launching with our ecosystem is a global fund. And basically this global fund is to support more projects. And currently our pot of gold is very empty. So if you know someone or is someone who has lots of money to like throw into our global fund, it'll be fantastic. So we can actually be able to support more projects. So the idea with the global fund is if you are someone who's interested in astrotourism and you say that I want to support astrotourism projects, you then put the money into the fund and then we will facilitate how the money is distributed throughout for astrotourism projects. So same with mental health as well as the astronomy skills for development projects as well. And then the training, I hope this works because it's supposed to work. Oh, wait, okay, here we go. So with the training, like I said, we have launched a free online training for astrotourism as well as for astronomy for mental health. So basically, this is just a recording of how the course currently looks like. So this will be available on Open Learn, which is an open university platform where anyone can access. So the aim of this course is basically to give people an overview of the OAD. And then what happens is then for astrotourism, they'll get background in astrotourism, how to create an astrotourism initiative and experience. And the assignment of this course actually is to basically draft your own astrotourism proposal. So at the end of it, you can either submit a proposal to the OAD for funding, or you have a proposal to actually approach funders as well to support your initiative to get you started. And then it also has like fun interactive things to keep participants engaged with, like quizzes as well. And then yes, wrapping up. Okay, the video is still going on. I think I can stop it and move on to the last slide. So how can you get involved? So we're always looking for reviewers, project support. So some of the people who submit proposals are not astronomers. They don't have astronomy background. So it would be nice to have astronomers that we can pair them with to support their projects, but also spreading the word outside of the astronomy community to other people in other fields as well. And collaboration. I think I spelled collaboration correctly. Collaboration, we're always open to collaborate in different projects. So we're not just limited to our 3 flagship projects. So the idea is like the framework that we have within the ecosystem can be expanded to more projects. So as time passes and things change, we're open to like creating new projects that can fall within the ecosystem itself. So if you haven't already, you can still join our Discord community. But otherwise, if you have more questions, please feel free to email me directly, or you can just send it to the general OAD email, which is info@astro.dev. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joyful, and to everyone online. We will start with the talk in just a few minutes. The last part of this sort of program, while we have IAU President Willie Benz here, so we've launched this OAD stuff, but we're also rounding up the IAU General Assembly last year. We had a massive legacy program, and so Duduzile just in 2 or 3 minutes will just run us through what they've managed to achieve. Duduzile was in charge of the outreach program that reached 28,000 people, and this is about the legacy project of the G8. And then we'll go to Jessica's talk. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. So I must speed up. I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Duduzile Kubeka. I work here. Okay, let's move on. So the legacy project, as Kevin said, it stemmed from the GA, right? Which the GA was the outreach and education activities were mainly hosted by the AFAS community, but it was also in collaboration with so many other organizations in the country, in the continent, and in the world, where people participated in all the initiatives. So with the legacy project now, we had 100 screens that were used for the poster sessions, which we had to buy because renting them was more expensive than buying. So we bought them and we had 100 screens. After the GA was over, we then started a plan to distribute these screens to various schools across the country. Why? Because we want to enforce or encourage virtual engagement. for a lot of these schools and in these communities that we work with, they don't have access to facilities such as these, or even access to scientists, let alone an astronomer, right? We have a room full of astronomers, but many schools hardly ever get the opportunity to engage with one. So through the virtual engagement that we are planning to do with this project is we plan to connect all these 100 schools through the virtual platform and invite prominent scientists. The next one, which will be held next month, we are in talks with Dr. May Jemison, and we'll expose all these 100 schools to astronauts, and will grow bigger and bigger afterwards. So these are the schools. I'm sure I know who that is. Anyway, so this is all based on just rough challenges we face, not just in public engagement, but also in education, particularly in South Africa, but I think the challenges are common across Africa, where representation is an issue. The science is not really considered as a viable career choice. Astronomy is even worse. Language, where we speak English and you go to these communities and they speak various other languages, right? There's 11 official languages in the country. And sustainability, insufficient resources. That one in red there, I put it in red because it's a challenge that we encountered during the GA, where all the 600 people who had volunteered to go to communities, we suddenly faced a barrier where we were told there are red zones that we absolutely cannot get into. And there were communications from, I know, for example, NASA, where they were told they absolutely should not get into communities, in township communities. So this is like impoverished areas where they really need this exposure, but we couldn't reach them because of the structural barriers and because of crime. And safety is a genuine issue, so we couldn't really ignore that as well. So that's a big challenge I think we still need to work together in resolving. So we do this through the cascade outreach model, where we have the students who then serve as mentors and role models to the learners in the communities. And we are also planning to have mentors or other professionals to mentor these students who are mentoring others, so are a bit senior to the students who mentor them in a cascade outreach model. The plan is to create diversity, inclusivity, and relatable role model, where when we send students to like if I speak Zulu, we send you to a community that speaks Zulu. If you speak Sesotho, we send you to a community that speaks Sesotho, because then you are more relatable and you're able to switch languages and be more understandable to the people you speak with. So these TV systems include the Raspberry Pi. It's like a mini computer and a keyboard. And then it also includes the ambassador program, where we are also empowering these ambassadors. Ambassadors are the students from all the different communities or different universities as well across the country. We released the call, people signed up, and we're excited to go. And they've been meeting up and networking with different teams that they've never met and going to the different communities across the country to participate in these initiatives. And then, yeah, those are the groups I just discussed. I'm sorry, I mixed up my slides. And so these are the schools in all the 9 provinces, and we have over 16 science centers. That's another very important stakeholder that I need to mention. How we are doing this, we've got the science facilities, SAO, SARAO, Itamba Labs, University of Limpopo, UNISA, all of those institutions working with us. We have the science centers embedded in the communities that we reach out to. And then the ambassadors who connect with the science centers. The science center offers science communication training and job shadowing experience to these students who are then learning science communication skills. And together they go to the schools that have been identified by the science centers to distribute the screens. Why that model? We want it to be sustainable even without our interference, where we know they will continue to engage with each other because they are from those communities and they would better speak for the communities than we can ever do. So in that way, then they relate back to us, whatever else is needed, and we are able to feed back into that community and support each other. And this is done over all the different provinces, over 16 science centers. Some of them also receive the screens. This is the distribution by cities or town. Later on, we'll have a breakdown of the districts. Long-term sustainability. So beyond this installation, we want to make sure this network continues. The virtual engagement, so I'm saying this now, I'm glad it's a room full of scientists. We invite you, please, we'll email you. Please sign up to be a speaker in one of the virtual engagements. We'll continue these live stream events, not just in South Africa, but we open it up to the rest of Africa and the rest of the world. The first engagement we had over 100 people from all over the world who participated, and it helped to have astronomers in the room because kids had a lot of questions. And with so many scientists there, they were able to answer those questions, and it was nice and interactive. And then we want continued engagements. But more than that, we want to move beyond the virtual engagement. And so we are hoping to raise more funds where we can actually bring those learners to these different facilities and take them out of their immediate surroundings so they too can experience this. There's a shift that happens in the mind when you are moved beyond the limitations of your surroundings and you get to see the possibilities that are out there. So beyond just science engagement, we need to empower them and make them see that there are endless possibilities out there. And even as they study and face whatever challenges, it's that knowing that they've seen and experienced and would work towards. And then we also continue to train these ambassadors and also provide teacher training opportunities in partnership with these science centers and these science facilities who can then train these teachers to conduct these activities. And the last slide here. Lessons learned, one size fits all approach does not work. We are different teams in different communities. Each group faced different challenges. It's just been a mission. But we are learning all of these, and because the ambassadors get there are flexible approaches to those challenges. Co-creation is very important, and that's why we work with these different partners. Community is everything. You cannot do anything without community, and so we need to continue working together. Representation matters. Today, I'm sure that is more meaningful when you see other people who are dressed like you. I'm like, hey, you and I are related. It's that simple for us, especially for Africans. We share a same surname or a clan name. You are my brother, you are my sister. And so when I stand there and I speak this language, you relate to the people, and instantly, before you even talk the science, you've won them over. The value of giving back and serving should be instilled early on in the careers of these young scientists. Then we are building a workforce of science, of socially conscious scientists who would understand that science is embedded in communities, and our work is to serve the communities. And none of this is convenient, but it's very necessary. And so we do whatever it takes. We can achieve a lot with limited resources, as we've demonstrated in the GA, but it's hard. So please make our jobs easy as well. When budgeting comes, think of this. It's not just outreach for the sake of outreach, but it's real impact in the lives, and that matters. And I don't do this alone. I have a team with me, but these are the main people who've been helping run the program. And so thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone, and I'm out.
I will please ask for forgiveness to everyone. I think you can see there's no way you can stop someone like Duduzile. She's been doing amazing work. To Prof. Willie Benz, this is what the IAU has managed to achieve. Having this conference in Africa for the first time, we made sure that the impact was bigger than just a science conference. And this is something that can be done at all science conferences. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone online. I'll hand over to Poncho and we can move on to Jessica's talk. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. Ross, if you didn't discipline Duduzile and Charles for that picture, I'm gonna be worried. Good morning. Good morning, and happy Heritage Day I know we are still kind of celebrating that. It's so fantastic to see SKO, SARAO, SAO, the universities in one room. As Ross said earlier, we should really do, Kev said earlier, we should really do this more often. Okay, my role now is just to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Jessica Dempsey is a recognized leader in the field of astronomy who has worked in different continents, including Antarctica. She's made significant contributions to our understanding of the universe. In the last few years, she's spent leading observatories to achieve the same objectives. She's currently the director of ASTRON, the Netherlands Institute of Radio Astronomy, and is the incoming Director General of the Square Kilometer Array Observatory, or SKO as we know it. Dr. Dempsey will play a crucial role in shaping the future of radio astronomy through leading SKA and leading international collaboration as part of that. Her advocacy for diversity, equality, and opportunity in astronomy is commendable, as well as promoting inclusivity and representation in the field. So over to you, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I was also really sorry that that was rushed because that was absolutely astonishing. And for someone for whom it's a vocation and a passion, I just want to commend that team again, because that's just extraordinary work that I have never seen, such dedicated work, and I'm really, really impressed. And thank you for hosting me. This has been a whirlwind of a couple of days. And I'm having a ball, and I'm actually going to be talking from my perspective as an instrument scientist. Anyone who was stuck with me on the tour today will have figured out that I'm a bit of a toy geek. There were way too many questions here, but I've been having a really good time here with you all. You have some incredible facilities and an incredible team, so it's a real pleasure. And so I'm going to talk you through a concept that I have for what's going to happen in radio astronomy over the next decade. It's a very exciting time, and it's also a very challenging time. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an aspect of both of these things. Because as an instrument scientist, when you're building your first telescope or your first instrument for a telescope, I think we don't dream of just building what are instruments or experiments. I think we really hope to be doing something revolutionary. And I call these things discovery engines. So when we build these discovery engines, what do we mean by these kinds of transformative instruments? Well, I have a recipe that I would like to talk you through. And I think there are three main ingredients for a discovery engine. The first one is that wavelength window. I would suggest to you that anytime you open up a new wavelength window on the universe, you are going to find something unexpected. You are going to really, truly find things that you were not expecting or knowing to see, and therefore it's already going to be quite revolutionary, but it isn't quite enough. The second aspect is called dimensionality. Every time you go for an additional dimension, 1D to 2D, 2D to 3D. We're seeing an integral field unit just earlier. That's really sexy. Time domain, multi-frequency. So you add a dimension or two to a new wavelength window, and you're starting to cook with gas. But there's a third really key element, and I just call it scientific greed. More of whatever that thing is. I want more resolution. I want more sensitivity. I want more field of view. And if you add these things together in one new instrument, this is when you have a discovery engine on your hands. And now I know when we're down here, you're going to hear a lot about Meerkat. You're going to hear a lot about Meerkat Plus. Well, I'm going to take you on a little adventure into the low frequencies. Because I want to talk about how do you know if you have a discovery engine on your hands? And the first one is you might have started out with an idea that had a particular science goal in mind, and then it becomes something more. So I'm actually going to talk you through LOFAR. So at ASTRON up in the Netherlands, and it's the world's most boring looking telescope, I will admit to you. It's also the only underwater telescope that works. But this is actually a beautiful drone shot, which we got over. So this is as pretty as it gets, folks. But I was like, how many megahertz? What? I hadn't worked in these frequencies before, but we have, hilariously, we call this the high band, without going up all the way to 250 megahertz. We have these two bands of antenna, and this is the super chirp, which we are flying over here at the moment. But in fact, it now goes to 52 stations. It has 2,000 kilometers worth of baseline. We're actually about to add Bulgaria, which will actually make it more. Over 100,000 antennas. And it really has a formidable And so everything, nothing is moving. Completely digitally constructed telescope. Everything is being done in the digital back end. The field of view is very, very impressive. And the thing that I mentioned earlier, this was originally an experiment to test the EOR. But here is just a snapshot over the last 12 years of some of the areas which has now gone into. Lightning studies, for example. This is just an incredible array of different kinds of things which it is currently doing. And I'm not going to jump through this much, except to say what you're chasing here especially is these large scales of things. And before we were very happy in these frequencies to simply get a detection, say, of a time series of an FRB, but now we're imaging. And we're imaging at extraordinary scales. And also these 2,000 kilometer resolutions mean that this is when we just have the Dutch stations. But when you go to that 2,000 kilometer VLBI, we are at the resolution of the Hubble telescope, but in the radio. And this is becoming really powerful tool. And even in the era of SKA low, which will be far more sensitive, it is not going to have this resolution capability. I'll just show you this because it's just, as a dork, this is just crazy. We're actually imaging in 3 dimensions in real time, and this is at microsecond accuracy. It turns out we didn't know how lightning worked. Oops. And this is the first time we're actually able to map exactly how lightning is going. And so the nice thing about this is the weather in the Netherlands ain't that great. And so you can actually now make this into a useful thing, and you can actually use the weather as well. So another element of a discovery engine is how is it impacted? How is it used? Who is wanting to use it? So I'm a bit of a metrics geek. And in fact, here you're going to see across the bottom here, and this was the 2017 to 2022 analysis of the impact of the observatories. And this is every kind of observatory, every flavor, optical, infrared, all ground-based. And this is the median impact per paper over this 5-year period. I've just highlighted what I would call the radio interferometers here, just to give you sort of a highlight. And you'll see here, in fact, that LOFAR is in the top 10 at any wavelengths across the world. And if you know where the bodies are buried and how much it costs to run the observatories, then you can do something more controversial and say, well, how much does it cost per paper? And in fact, I can't even put Sophia on here at over $1 million per paper. But what's interesting, and this is sort of, you can see here the VLA, you know, about 250,000. And here, this is how you can tell it's the Dutch telescope. Because it's very monetarily effective. So you can see it's actually 10 times cheaper per paper. But if you take both of those things and you say, what is that impact for cost? LOFAR is in the top 3 on the planet. And so you're being very effective, very impactful across a range of different sciences. All right, so you've got a great discovery engine. How do you keep it there? Right, you have to keep, and you guys are going to be familiar with some of these things. You need to keep the expertise with you. You need to be aware of what everyone else is building. You need to compete and complement, and I'm going to talk a lot more about sustainability. So right now, we are in a huge upgrade. So right now, at the moment, we can only do 1 band at a time. That's just to do with network and challenges on the data end. We're going to be able to do both at once. There's lots of good value to that. This is actually our first light image from the first of the 3 stations which we've put together. But it's really a new observatory. Every single thing in the digital backend is being improved. And we are right in the middle of this right now. This is just for the instrument guys among you. This is just some instrument porn here. So we've got the components, everything is arriving, and our people are hard at work putting these together. We've actually just celebrated our 15th station as of this morning. And I'm going to jump through this because you guys have seen instruments. We just saw a bunch of them. There's nothing exciting here, but you don't have the Dutch weather to contend with, where you did have to actually pull this all apart in the delightful winter season here. I actually did clomp out there in my clomper and help with at least one of the stations. So I think they had to go and redo that one. But I want to jump. So we've got LOFAR 2 in its season, but I want to now span out to say, what is LOFA and everyone else in the radio community going to be looking at in about 2028 to 2030? And I can't even fit on here all of the radio experiments, which are either already in operation, being upgraded, or being built in this time frame. So this is sort of just a rough snapshot across wavelengths of some of the bigger guys out there, or the ones who are potentially going to be in the mix. And the interesting thing about this, and this is why I love going out to the mid-site, because you've got Meerkat there, and then behind you, you've got Hera, which is made of chicken wire. And I'm like, that's radio, right? You can still do things with chicken wire and do really cool experiments. But I am not going to talk to you about SKA today. Probably because I'll be doing a lot of that in the future. Because you, of course, know a bit about this. But the point being, we are changing the way we are investing in radio. Why? We're changing it because that frontier space is there to be explored now, and we know that. So we're going from these little experiments, from a few hundred K to maybe what LOFA was, which was about 50 million, up to these investments. And there's a reason for that. And I won't go through a lot of SKA snapshots, but I was really fortunate on Wednesday to be out there. There's a lot of important people in this picture. I had to take some here, but to see, every time I see Meerkat and Meerkat Plus is sexy, but also to see the first of the mid dishes coming up was really cool. And there were some people who did some very hard work in this room towards that day, so I can commend them as well. But it is going to be a very exciting time. But I'm going to now sort of switch, because of course we could talk a lot about the great science and these amazing instruments, but I'm going to sort of now talk about the realities of this renaissance. So we've got some astronomers in the room. What's the currency of astronomy? What's the thing you compete for? Time, yeah? Observing time, right? This is the thing you can't get any more of. I'm going to say to you that coming up, the currency, at least in radio astronomy, is compute and storage. We are not going to be, at the current rate, be able to afford the kind of data rates that are going to come out of these telescopes at the moment. So I just grabbed the LOFA numbers, and just to sort of give you a concept of the data rates which are coming in onto those antennas, because we're living in full Fourier space, right? It's terabytes per second, and we're desperately, speedily trying to throw away, condense, analyze the data you need and to get that down to that paper as fast as you can. And I had to think about what is an analogy for this. I did admit that I did have a whiskey in my hand at the time, but I think that the radio telescopes are kind of like the universe's distillery. That is actually what we're doing. So I don't know if there's any whiskey aficionados in the room, but the whiskey distillation factor is about 100. You need 100 liters of water to get a beautiful liter of that lovely whiskey that some of us enjoy. Interesting random fact you didn't ask for. The biggest impact in Scotland's water supply is the whiskey industry. And in fact, when they started to put a sustainable circular economy in there, capturing their wastewater, returning it into farms, it was the single greatest mitigation effort in sustainable solutions in Scotland's history. You didn't ask for that, sorry. Okay, if you want to guess what the distillation factor is for radio astronomy, I'm not going to wait for you to make. You can see it's far more familiar. So when you're looking at these barrels, what are we paying for with a good whiskey? I would say there's two things. We're paying for the label. We're going to trust that good label that's known for doing a good job. And we're paying for time in these barrels. And that's exactly what you're expecting when you're dealing with the data as well. It's to how much time and latent time is spent in those systems that is going to cost you. And that's why we have to go to real-time processing, or we cannot afford this. So LOFA and SKA, we have to minimize the footprint in all, and we have to have low latency or near real-time processing. At the moment, the LOFA archive is the single largest archive on the planet. And of course, we know the SKA numbers. So these are the numbers which are really scaring me and keeping me up at night. And so I'm going to jump on. But essentially the one takeaway from this, I just did the calculations for SKA's 2% share in the Netherlands. What is the Netherlands cost? And if you add up 2035, to find an additional 15 million if you're talking at commercial rates for just the storage and process. But the other part that's keeping me up at night, apart from just the cost, is can our planet afford these? So I've gone on a deep dive here with you today about, well, we're a scientist, so we can actually figure out what this impact actually is and decide how we can find the low-hanging fruit that might improve these numbers. Because I can tell you right now, we are really literally only looking at the tip of the iceberg, and we have to go a little bit deeper. The questions I've been asking, what is the carbon footprint of astronomical telescopes? What is the impact of a paper? And what if we map the PhD? As someone who went to Antarctica, I can tell you mine's about one of the worst. But if you had it instead of an H index, what if you had a G index? What if you actually could measure this number? So I did this along with, the first paper that I'm going to point you to is this one here. And it's a really impressive attempt to try and at least estimate across most of the world's observatories what the carbon footprints are. And so I've just taken some averages here. If you're expecting a large or a mid-based observatory and then mid to large space missions, they've done quite an interesting attempt to make these comparisons. Again, back to remember, I know where all the papers are. So if you went to say, what is that per paper? You can now estimate this because you'd like to think, okay, maybe more papers, that means we've got less of a carbon footprint. So I don't know about you, but tons of carbon doesn't really mean much to me. So I thought, okay, we need a better unit of measurement. We often talk about, all right, per paper, how many cars per year worth of carbon might this be? But then you can be confused. What kind of cars are we talking about? And so I decided we could do something. So the Dutch unit I've decided of measurement, which is cows. And so here you're seeing for a mid and large ground-based observatory or a space mission, how many cows worth of carbon you might be seeing. I was on a roll now, so I decided what else can we do? You can do it in dogs. And then the most green and carbon efficient of the pets, you can also do it in cats. So all of these things aside, if you as an astronomer want to feel slightly better about this, you can also then go and say, well, how are the particle physicists doing? And for the LHC, you can see they're almost in kilocats per paper. And actually, I'm going to come back to CERN in a little bit because there's some interesting stuff they're doing. Okay, but this is actually an estimate. So if you want to do this properly, you have to do a life cycle analysis. And we actually did go and do this for the LOFAR telescope. So this is actually now going and taking your electricity bills, going and figuring out the full footprint. And it's far more accurate. It's a lot of work. For LOFAR, the telescope itself, it came up to about this. For our annual operations footprint, we're getting about 17 tons of carbon, or about 3 cows per paper. That's actually about half of what was estimated in the paper. So this is the difference in the accuracy. The good news here being this electricity is all green. So at least here we're not doing too badly. But what we are not doing is mapping the processing and storage in that of the actual data. So for an observing hour, it's actually about 1 cat worth of carbon. But if I just want to do a beautiful image like this with the Dutch stations, only about 7,000 core hours of processing, only a tiny bump in carbon. Remember I showed you, though, that beautiful high-resolution image, 250,000 core hours, 66% extra carbon that we weren't paying attention to because of the latency in that process. So if you are going to say we're hiding some of these footprints in the data costs, in 2024, maybe we're missing about 40%. But remember that increasing data lake in 2035, half of that carbon footprint is going to come from our processing and our storage. And these are not things which we are currently mapping right now. Now, we've got some optical astronomers in here. If you're feeling really like that sounds like a you problem, radio astronomy. We're now actually looking at this, and I'm working with now Whitford of MIT to look at how they're not mapping this also in the optical. So you're talking about a JWST image. I'm going to use a different unit of measurement here. We're going to talk about the JWST modeling compute impact. We're going to use a Tesla charge this time. So this is how to actually one charge to get your Tesla, which was on 0 juice, up to its top. And one model run is about this much on a typical cluster. It's about 14 Tesla charges just to do one model run. And a typical paper might do us up to a dozen. So just one image, which doesn't look like it's that bad, and you're actually going to see it. This is going to come up properly. 41 Tesla charges, a single paper. Now, if you want to know how far that will get you, 20,000 kilometers. So I was on a bit of a run here. I wanted to see what this meant. So if the current JWST publication rate is steady in about 5 years, I would have got enough mileage under my belt to do something useful. I could have put Elon in his roadster and I could have injected him into the face of the sun. Which, you know, makes me feel good on a bad day. So I wanted to introduce you to something called Jevons paradox. This was actually invented in, or talked about as an engineer in the Industrial Revolution, and coal was very expensive. And so what they thought was, okay, well, you know, they made one particular improvement in the coal production, and the cost of coal plummeted. And they're like, this is great. This means we won't have kind of as much horror that we're having over the top of London. But instead, what happened? More people started buying coal. Now everyone could afford coal. And the thing is, when cost decreases, consumption increases. So efficiency backfires. What do we do with this in science? I'll talk to you about it in a second, but I want to also talk about this. This came out, there's two articles in Guardian, that if you think we're bad, data centers are hiding their carbon costs even larger than anything we could possibly do in astronomy. And this was to show that through some creative accounting, the numbers are really quite terrifying. And I have some of you who like AI, it's about 10 times the electricity for a single ChatGPT search of a Google search. And this is pretty bad now, but the data center power consumption is going to increase by about 160% minimum by 2030. And you might have noticed this as well. The AI boom has meant that pretty much every single big company on the books has walked away from any promises that they had made about carbon caps or carbon neutrality. And if you think, okay, that's all right, we'll just build some more power stations, we'll get some more wind farms, we'll get some more solar farms. Well, in Europe, at least, this is not possible. Why? Because there's now a futures market in those particular builds, and big data centers have bought them all. So they're called power purchase agreements. And the data companies have got 95% of the, at least in Europe's, next 20 years worth of green builds. So already more than half of this power is being used by big data companies. When we're in 2040, that will be 95%. There will be no green power for anybody else. So this is what Jevons paradox means in science. Every time we make an improvement in our code, what do? We do more science with it. Right? So we are not in terms of astronomy either capping ourselves and saying, are we going to put some of those efficiencies instead or as well towards sustainability goals? We need to ask ourselves some questions. What does carbon neutral astronomy even mean? What are the waste products of astronomy? What does circular astronomy look like? And so I firmly say we shouldn't be telling PhD students to travel less. That is not how we're going to solve the astronomy carbon problem. I believe the weight of these transitions have to lie with the large infrastructures and institutions. So the more important question is observatories, labs, universities. How do we chart our path to a sustainable future in a way that actually works? So the first one I already mentioned, we map our iceberg. These life cycle analyses are really good for seeing where exactly your footprint is, because without that, you can't decide exactly what your targets should be, what the gains and where the easy maybe things to do are, and also contextualize your story to funding bodies that might be interested in giving you funds to actually do this. The second thing you can do, actually first, yeah, so I mentioned CERN and the kilocats per paper. They're actually also trailblazers in looking at what they can do. This is a report which they put out every single year, and it's a revelation. I didn't know that they have found new species of butterfly around the LHC. But it's also really good because they have clear sustainability targets, and they're actually going for it and doing this. So there's some examples out there of research infrastructures that are doing it right. So the second one in astronomy, you know how astronomers like to think we're experts in everything? This is my favorite example. Don't dabble. There are experts in environmental analysis. We don't have to do this ourselves. Sustainability consultants, bringing people in. In fact, I'll talk a little bit later. We're actually at ASTRON. We're bringing in a full-time sustainability engineer, right, whose job it is to put those systems requirements into everything ASTRON does from the get-go. And the third one is, can we set goals within our science? One of the new programs we're doing at ASTRON, which we have just had funded, is I showed you that beautiful high resolution images. There's 250,000 core hours to do one image. That's just not sustainable. We're now working on improving that pipeline to get that to real-time processing. We're hoping for a 40 times speed up in science, but actually we're doing an 80 times speed up. It's just that half of that is going towards making sure we keep ourselves carbon neutral while we do it. So we have both a carbon cap and an improvement in science. So that's a deliberate choice we have made in order to make sure, and some of these components in order to make it greener are more expensive, but this is a part of our commitment to making a green astronomy future. So I really, I hope I haven't depressed you too much, by the way. I really do think we're in a very, very exciting time. And we are going to have this incredible discovery space in radio astronomy over the next couple of decades. And there are people in this room who are going to be able to solve these problems. It's going to be a very fun time if you like the big toys. But I do also want to leave you with, I think we can also put some of that expertise, some of that know-how, some of that problem solving towards figuring out how that future can be green and how that future can be sustainable. So with that, thank you very much. I welcome questions.
Jessica, any questions?
Yes.
Hi, Jessica, thank you for that excellent talk. Can you comment on how much the publish or perish kind of culture within science sustainability? It almost kind of mirrors the consumerist culture of our society. So yeah, just was interested in your thoughts on that, how it affects sustainability.
And this is kind of why I want to, so the next thing I'm working on is a paper with Nature to work on this sort of index that you can put on a paper. Because unless you're incentivizing sustainable astronomy, then it's going to fall over at that first hurdle. And so if you can see on a paper, this paper was done green, right? This paper was done with organizations which are carbon neutral. This is what the carbon cost of this paper is. Then you can start to incentivize institutes, observatories to work in that space, just like H-indexes and other things do this as well. So you have to make sure that there's, I don't know if it's a stick or a carrot or a little bit of both, but I want it to be the world where you have PhD students and young researchers saying, I want a green PhD, thank you. Right, I only want to work with observatories and data, which has a low G-index. So I think that it has to be falling on a kind of responsibility. And the other interesting thing, we got 3 million euros from the Dutch government to put the sustainability engineer concept in. And as soon as we did that, a bunch of other institutes came up and said, can we have some of that too, please? Yeah. And so it is a thing of, if there's incentives on the table, including funding for doing this, then that's how it cascades. But I don't think it should fall on individual astronomers to risk their careers, for example, in order to make this happen, because that's where I don't think those pressures should be there. Does that answer it? Okay. You want
more questions? As well.
I wanted to leave a bit of time in case there was people who had concerns, questions.
Any more questions?
Yes.
Can you tell us just maybe a few of the kind of practical things that you're doing to in that last step? About half, half of it is going towards actually doing it in a more carbon neutral way. But just a few examples.
What are the carbon neutral practices that we're trying to put in? Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. As you said, that like the low hanging fruit is in the data processing and storage. In terms of we're so inefficient there that nearly every time we do a win there, we're going to be improving those things. But making sure that the energy is green is obviously the easiest one. If you're not already on green power, I will only ever advise that that's the first place that you have to move to. But it's surprising the other things that you can chip away at. And what's funny is that travel burden, even though astronomers are on the worst of the pops, it really doesn't make a dent compared to the impact of the large infrastructures and observatories. One of the interesting things about green data centers is this, which is, so you can hear, and Finland is an example, people are saying, you have to rotate your disk. Well, the thing is, to be greener, you need to discard all of your current equipment every 18 months. So when I talk to some of the sustainability engineers, they're like, well, it looks great if you're just looking at the energy, but if you're looking at the overall waste products, it's actually worse on balance. So that's what I talked about with waste products. There are all sorts of other areas where you might be able to make impacts, which aren't necessarily just carbon footprint reduction, but are also things which have massive environmental impacts. That's why it's really interesting to talk to some of the circular economy people. And I'll say, when you're in remote areas, the impact of returning a site to original is often some of the largest impacts in a life cycle, for example. What are you going to do with all that copper? What are you going to do with all of that extra? So those sorts of things, if you're clever with some of those solutions, you can claw back a lot of gain. And this is a really ongoing, interesting area of conversation. So I'm trying to get people beyond the travel conversation to some things that are sort of more interesting. Yeah, Paul.
Very Jessica, a question for clarification. You said that you have to renew everything every 18 months. Is that because compute resources get more
efficient? That's right.
Okay, yeah. So even the waste that you generate by trashing the old equipment doesn't add up, to the gain that you doesn't. The gain is still larger with the new equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, following on that question, I personally think AI is at the top of the garden of that platform. I think there's been huge capital expenditure, similar to like the railroad boom, for example. And probably when that hype cycle hits, we're going to be stuck with a lot of data centers and the hardware that might be underutilized to what's the only ways of using that or exploiting that.
I mean, I'm desperate enough to be opportunistic about any of this stuff, and I would be happy to see the AI bubble burst a bit, just because of the carbon footprints alone on these things. But I mean, I'm not looking at that very specifically, but we definitely have to be more creative about what we use. And I'm one of the ones on recycling disks and being okay with a higher energy footprint, but using it green. These are sorts of conversations and balancing on tape and all of these sorts of things that people think are old and outdated modes. But actually, if you do them in a sensible way, you end up with all sorts of interesting potential compromises. But, I have to say that, well, I shouldn't say this for the majority of astronomers in the room, we have to be far more ruthless about our data. It's as simple as that. And it's in radio astronomy as well. We're pretty lazy about this. I mean, I threatened to delete some data in the Netherlands, and you can hear the screaming from here. And so, the optical communities come across this far earlier than this. So we really do need to be very much more practical in the radio if we're hoping to get the information out that we want. And so just building big data centers, I think we should be thinking more creative solutions than that. But I would happily take the leftover, Google AI clusters from their hands if that would be what would make it work.
Kujo, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. So thank you for raising this important subject. And it sounds like we are almost past peak carbon energy, so to speak. But in the context of nuclear being one of the potential solutions, what's your take on that? Given that, South Africa, at one point, we invested very heavily in small modular nuclear reactors. And there are interesting developments in China as well with different, I think, 3 technologies right now being put forward for generating nuclear energy. A breakthrough in that would basically deem this conversation almost moot, so to speak. Doesn't it?
I totally agree with you. And in fact, I'm a proponent of high-tech nuclear technology. I think we walked away from that at the wrong time. And there indeed are developments going on this area, which I think would give us solutions in the short to mid-term while we walk towards even better ones. And we're looking at the fusion industry, but I think that those realities are maybe another 2 to 3 decades away. And if we have high-tech nuclear in the middle of that, I think that's actually an incredibly sensible option, particularly for seismically stable large countries, and South Africa is a great example of that. So I fully agree.
Any other questions? I have one. I don't want to get in trouble, but I mean, given just how politicians are so wishy-washy about the stuff, one moment they are into supporting renewables, one moment they are withdrawing investments and incentives. How do you anticipate engineers and scientists could actually get around influencing this a lot more beyond the political environment?
I think coordination is the key. So we're seeing a lot of traction now in Europe, at least, and interest at the EC, but they first ask us to self-organize. It's like, if you come to us with a plan, if you come to us with a need, and that's sort of why we made up this project at ASTRON, where we say, oh yeah, we're going to need 3 million, and these are the efficiencies we're going to do. And that works, right? So you actually just have to come up with a concept, and there are pots of money which are different to the science ones. And this is the important part, right? They really are coming from different funding lines. And so showing that you've already done your homework, and the more coordination at a high level that you do, the easier that argumentation becomes to funding bodies and government agencies. And I think that they really appreciate this coming from the science and technology industry, because this is where the solutions are going to happen. So that coordination and recognizing these are usually the most interest is coming from your finance ministries, from your economic industries, not necessarily from the science patch. So I think we found some success there. And what was interesting about that is the funding agencies are listening, because they said, well, if you put a pot of money that is only available to universities or institutes that commit to carbon neutrality and demonstrate it, people are going to rush to do those initiatives, because here was money that wasn't available before. So I think incentivizations like this, the funding bodies are actually listening. And you're right, it's inconsistent. But I think if there's a general push to say, actually, we've done our work and we know that there's these things we can do, I found that really resonates at funding levels.
I'm glad once I went before me, because I feel like you're pretty more diplomatic than I was. I was thinking of things a bit more technically. But maybe a simpler question. You touched on sort of from the engineering side, aiming for efficiency in compute, but then don't try to cram more compute just because you can. Yeah. Is that something that you try to mandate at ASTRON? Or maybe not mandate, but just sort of suggest heavily to say, just because you can fit more in a rack, don't actively.
It's actually the other way around. It was our engineers. When we did at listening session, sustainability and climate change was some of the highest concerns in our staff. When we said we would like to add these elements in, the stampede to do this was huge. And it was interesting because we have a lot of work in our R&D department on digital backends, and they're already working in these sustainable areas. So the idea that actually the problem and the technology interest was in doing this sustainably and with low energy, they were actually really into that. It was only the scientists that were angry with us. So I think on the engineering aspects, this is just another really interesting development space. And so we've had, and so the importance is not putting it in as an additional afterthought at the end. You have to include it as a systems requirement at the start of the project, just like cost and schedule. And if you treat it as a normal constraint, it just organically comes through the project just like any other one. So at that point, you just accept that as one of the limitations that you're putting on the system, and it doesn't have as much of a sort of, like, as you say, a stranglehold on the project.
Sorry, Jessica, talking about the data centers and the compute cost of autonomy, right? So you must have done the comparison between outsourcing all the processing to one of the commercial providers versus doing it in-house. And then especially if you can do it with one of the commercial providers, but on-demand processing when you need it instead of running your own computers all the time, right? And so how did that compare? Because I'm very curious about it.
So these are commercial rates that I am quoting in the numbers. But if I went to Google, which I did, and I said, well, what kind of deal are you going to give me? And they gave me a great deal, as long as I never want to see my data again. It's not the processing. It's not the cloud. It's, if you want, it's the ingress and egress. And they'll give you a deal on that too for a couple of years, right? And so it's a bit of a long con, but it's getting the data back again. If you want to do that in any kind of bulk, the numbers become formidable really quickly. And as to, you know, the astronomy way, well, we'll just build our own cluster, we can do it. That's fine up to a point, but we're at that point, right? The scales we're talking about in terms of processing are well beyond what, you know, an individual cluster can or should do. We don't have any business dabbling in it anymore. We do need to be able to make sure that there are data centers at the scales needed for these research infrastructures, but they still need to be professionally run data centers. So I am an advocate for the fact that the in-house model for such types and amounts of data and the bulk processing and parallelism needed, it just isn't something that is in any way sustainable. And I now just mean in keeping up with what is going to be needed on the maintenance and the costs and the energy. It just isn't viable anymore.
Yeah, I may disagree with you a little bit, but we are doing it in the Google Cloud. And actually, what we're seeing is that the cost is not in getting it out. But that might be different for, you know, an SKA or a low power scale radio observatory from an optical wide field something. So
could be that, yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know if there's a tipping point there, right? Beyond which doesn't become viable.
I know we are standing between you and a bride.
Oh, sorry.
Jessica will be at the bride. So between two in the meet, you can ask more questions. Jessica, the one thing metrics I didn't see on your slide is a Karoo sheep. So you have
I'll get on that. Okay.
You might relate to it a little more. So thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Jessica. That was absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure you've piqued a lot of interest and you probably get a lot more people wanting to get involved in one way or another. So thank you so much, everyone. And
thank you so much also from my side, Jessica and Ponzo, for arranging this here. I think it's been really fantastic to have all of us come together today. So thank you to Willie for being with us here today, for all of our guests. It's lovely to have you, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. I think it's now bright time. I'm not sure if anyone has any announcements on how this will work. I think the briars are already out here and we just enjoy.
Sorry, just one thing. I know there's a lot of people who haven't been here before, who haven't been here a while. Sharpness at the back, one of our tour guides, the new business center. Very fast. Around as well as from here. While we wait for the.
Okay, so, Linda?
Hi. Yes, I'm taking a ride. We provided rolls, cool drinks, some more snacks from this morning, and help yourselves enjoy. And we'll have some nice music as well. So.
Thanks.